good evening, good afternoon, good morning, maybe, depending where are you connecting with us from. I'm really happy that during this summer break, summer heat, you found the time to join us for our next meeting, the fourth meeting in our new series, 10 Stages, Human Rights from History to Action. This meeting has a subtitle, as every meeting in this session, Organization. Today we will highlight the powerful stories of historical defiance and examine the vital role of civil society, activism and education in preventing atrocities today. And our series is connected with our 10 Stages app, which you can download for free. You will find the links in the comments under this streaming. And you can also visit our website and the link to the website 10 Stages you'll find also in the comments. This meeting is a great opportunity to have a conversation with two great experienced speakers, activists, educators, people who are not indifferent, people who try to build the memory, who try to preserve the memory, who try to do as much as possible for the next generations as well. And this is also one of the key missions of Humanity in Action Poland. And today we're meeting with two guest speakers. So the first one is Piotr Jakowenko, co-founder of the foundation Brama Zuckermana, the Zuckerman Gate, from Poland. The foundation is based in Będzin, and the foundation works to preserve the memory of the Jewish community of Będzin and Zagłębie region in Poland. Piotr is also a graphic designer, and he's specializing in publishing graphics and exhibition designs. And he is co-author of the album, which is called The Memory of the Borderlands, Pamięć Pogranicza. And he also developed the graphic design of the book Nie damy się wysiedlić, what means that we won't get deported, which was devoted to the memory, which commemorates actually Będzin Ghetto. And I'm pretty sure that we will talk about it a bit later today. And the second guest speaker is Miśko Stanisic, who is the director and co-founder of Terraforming, an NGO based in Novi Sad in Serbia. And Miśko is also educator, activist, and he, in his work, focuses on combating anti-Semitism and anti-Gypsyism, and as well as addressing Holocaust distortion and the abuse of history for nationalist propaganda. And Miśko is the person who develops also the idea of the graphic novels, and he develops several projects connected with this idea, which was pretty new in education, one of the new educational tools. And today we will have the possibility to talk about your experiences, your work, your plans, and I think maybe a bit about not only yours, but our fears and concerns about today. And this meeting is possible to happen thanks to the support of Google Poland, and the whole project is under the patronage of Babka od Histy and the portal ngo.pl. So one technical announcement before we start our question rounds. If you, our dear audience, have any questions, comments you would like to ask or add something to the discussion, feel free to do so. You can leave your comment in the comment section under the box where you can see us. We will be happy to pass the comment or the information to our speakers, and we will have some time to answer to all the questions. So thank you one more time for joining us, for finding a time during the summer. I know it's difficult to find a time for working related issues during the summer break. So I'm really, really grateful, especially that the topic is pretty difficult and complex, especially when we are looking what is going on around us today. And I would like to go out a bit, maybe out of our so-called bubble, because we are all, I think, in this educational activist bubble, but we need to reach also those who are somewhere beyond the bubble. So in Humanity in Action Poland, we combine the historical education with human rights education, and we create educational tools and materials, as well as training programs to support people who want to change the world. It sounds like a big word now, but this is the mission. This is something what is really important to us. And I would like to ask maybe first Piotr, because your work at Brama Zuckermana also focuses on preserving Jewish heritage in Poland. And how do you think, how can this historical memory be a tool of resistance against violence, discrimination, and collective forgetting? Because I have the feeling that we are experiencing something like collective forgetting nowadays.
Yeah, I think it's a very, very fair question. Thank you for inviting me and arranging this meeting. I think we all have a feeling that the history um, uh, accelerated, I would say, nowadays, and we started to feel challenged by the contemporary reality. So our approach in our organization was from the beginning based on the material heritage of the Jewish community that was living in Benjin, in our city, where half of the population of the city was Jewish, more than 25,000 people. So our approach was to preserve the heritage, to be actually that the heritage could be a living witness of the life of the Jewish community, that they were actually there living, creating, building our cities. And also heritage could be a witness of the um, or a testimony of the Holocaust. So, and actually, I think that we are at the moment when the Holocaust survivors are already gone almost. So we cannot come invite them and ask and speak with them. So we have actually two strategies, I think, two main strategies. One is to actually work with the recorded testimonies that are in the archives across world, Shoah Foundation, others. And second strategy is to work with the heritage, that the heritage can be a kind of witness which is not a preserved witness, especially if the heritage is developed or surrounded with a narrative, with the education program, with the exhibitions, any kind. So that's our way of thinking about it, and I think it can be really powerful tool to, let's say, to show that the world and to the future generations what happened 80 years ago, 70 years ago, and that it actually should not happen never again. So that's how I see it.
So I will ask you one more thing. Listening to you, I'm wondering how it is, because there are many traces in Benjin and in Zagłębie. There is a rich heritage you can use in this educational purpose, but always there is a question, what if the other side, so the recipients of your work actually, will tell you this is not our story, this is not our heritage, and we are not interested. So how how to reach them and use this powerful tool, as you said, because it is powerful tool. But
well, we have the history can't be erased, especially if there are some guardians of it. It won't be erased. So you cannot change it. What was the reality of the cities of many cities in Poland? And of course, if somebody is interested more in the so-called non-Jewish Polish history, he's free to develop it. He's free to be interested in that. He's free to develop his own projects. We are interested in the stories of the minority of the Jewish community, and we work on it, and we from the day one, from the start about 16 years ago, when we started, we treated this history as a part of our common history, as a part of history of Poland. That it's we were very much against like a selective memory, that this is a part that some Jewish people should take care of, or maybe Israelis or Americans or whoever, Jews, so-called Jews, should think about it. And this is not our interest. We were very much against such a approach. From the beginning, we were trying to explain to the local community, to the people, that listen, these people were Polish citizens. They were citizens of our cities, of Będzin, of Sosnowiec, of other places. They were living for generations here in the city of Będzin, probably from the location in the Middle Ages, from the beginning of town. So it was hundreds of years, and they were neighbors of your grandparents living here. So you cannot understand actually the history of the place without this Jewish element, this Jewish part. You are not able to understand where are you, what is this place, and actually who are you in this place, if without understanding its past, what happened here. And that was our fundamental approach.
And you are talking about people like you who are active today, but I would like to make one step to the past and talk a bit about also those who actively, who simply acted against the violence and against the evil in the past, because in our application, mobile application, 10 Stages, and on our website, we present the stories of people who, despite the really high risk, decided to take an action, and they actively responded to evil and injustice. Often those people were risking their lives and lives of their families, neighbors. They tried to react, they tried to do something. So now I would like to ask maybe Mishko, in your opinion, how can this so-called ordinary people, especially in polarized or authoritarian environments, stop the violence once it's become systematized by the state? It's like official. How this ordinary people can act, what they can do.
Thank you, Larissa. Thank you, first of all, for inviting me to this very important discussion. I'm very honored to be here and glad to contribute to the best of my abilities to this very important topic. It's a complicated question, Larissa, although it sounds like a no-brainer. When something is wrong, you should say this is wrong and react against it. But it is really not as simple as that. If I may, I will combine a little bit of and react to what has already been said during the first question that you asked my colleague here. we are, of course, learning from the past. We learn from the past. And there are a couple of reasons, I would say, why we are learning, particularly from the example of the Holocaust. Why is it so important? Obviously, it was the most important horrific crime, but also a lesson that pushed us to formulate what we today call our European values, the fundamental values that we are trying at least to build our societies upon, including human dignity, rule of law, pluralism, etc. As you mentioned, we are a little bit in a bubble. We don't need to persuade each other. But it's really not so that all these values are coming without any obstacles, and they're being attacked, and they are being disrupted and challenged today in tremendous ways, and very strongly opposed. So we are in a situation today in Europe, also in other places around the world, where these values that we really thought we learned something, we know about it, we don't need to explain that this is necessary. Unfortunately, we do. These most fundamental values are threatened. And usually when I speak about the memory culture and remembering the Holocaust, I say that there are basically main two reasons why we need to work on this and keep this memory alive. First reason is to remember the victims with dignity, to remember them as human beings, as individuals, and not as a gray, stereotypical group and number. And also to preserve and to save them from being abused by different sorts of propaganda and distortion. So that's one reason. And the other reason is to understand, to raise awareness of our own personal responsibility to not become perpetrators to start with. And then hopefully, if we notice something, to be upstanders and not simply just watch when things are going in terrible directions. And for me, these are the two main reasons why I'm working with education about the Holocaust. Now, my colleague here said that there are two ways. We can work with testimonies and we can work with heritage, which is absolutely true. But I would like to propose another one. And it's another strategy which also helps us with the question of relevance, the question that Larissa, you asked, why do we care? It's not about us. It was far away. It was long ago, or whatever that might be. And it's working with contemporary young generations of the victims group. In this case, I'm working with the Jewish and Roma youth, trying to help them, to encourage them, to empower them, to formulate their own perspectives and reasons why this memory is important for them. Now, they are not witnesses, they are not survivors. They did not witness themselves the horrors of the Holocaust, obviously. But they have their own motivations and their own reasons and their own narratives, and it is very important for them. They have it in their families. They have it in their identity, much stronger than many others. And I think that we have a chance, an opportunity to use this generation to bring them into the discussion, but it's also into the shaping of the commemorative and memorialization in general events in education, to be speakers, to speak to peer-to-peer, to their own generation and explaining why it is important for me. You know, there is no wrong answer there. I mean, how can you say, no, you're wrong? No, it is something that is very personal. Whatever they explain, whatever they say, it is right. It is important for them because of this. And I believe that this will help us to bring this closer also to others, seeing that their peers, people who look exactly like them, live in the same city at the same time and do everything else exactly the same as everybody else. But they do have this connection to the Holocaust, which is much stronger than maybe somebody else. And I think that we should explore this, what I called inclusive memory culture, which is focused on giving space for young generation of the communities of former victims to shape the content and the format of memorialization, both in education and in commemoration. And it is, I think, a very important element of understanding that this is not somebody else's story, it is not their story, it is our story, it is the story of our community, of our society. So precisely as you said, you can't really, operate with just pieces of this history, skipping part of it and then like trying to ignore how we became what we are today without it. And to also emphasize, we as the majority population, in my case, in Serbia, I'm as Serb, I'm the majority here. I'm not against, as you also said, learning and building projects around Serbian heritage. Of course not. Why would we? It would be crazy to be against it. No, I support it. But what I mean is that who is responsible for these other cultural and historical heritages, plural, if not us from the majority? Because the minority has a very, very small and tiny voice. Simply statistically watching, like the Jewish community in Serbia is like about, just a couple of thousand people, while there are several million Serbs. So of course it is our responsibility to help and to support minorities to preserve their cultural heritage, particularly because the reason why this minority is so small is so terrible. There was a genocide, there was a murder, they perished. So we have several layers of responsibilities there to keep this heritage alive, but also to keep awareness of the majority population that it is our history and our heritage as well. And just to answer to your question where we started from, Larissa, what can a person, an individual do in circumstances when the society is gliding into some sort of totalitarian, authoritarian and anti-democratic environment? Unfortunately, there were three things which I personally lived in my life when I witnessed this. The first one was quite, catastrophic. It was the war in former Yugoslavia. I'm originally from Sarajevo, so I saw how the entire society just went to the war. It's like, like after huge rains, when you see like this on the movies, in the news, like entire hill is just gliding down to the river and the houses are being like, you can't do really nothing. It's like it's a huge natural catastrophe, disaster. Yes, I saw how when the entire society was like gliding like that into a disaster. And I don't think that at that particular point, as an individual, one could do a lot to stop this entire process. It was already too late. But you still have your own personal responsibility. What I said in the beginning, what are the goals of remembering and teaching about the Holocaust? That you still have a choice, and you still have an opportunity not to become a perpetrator, a criminal, a murderer, and to keep your own moral compass. And thankfully, hundreds of thousands of people did kept their moral compasses, while also many, many thousands didn't, and a lot of crimes had been committed. But that was the first time when I saw it. The second time, it was literally after October 7, when I realized that anti-Semitism is exploding in social media, in the news, among people, talking, that is being so mainstreamed and normalized that I was absolutely shocked. I never thought that it's possible. I kind of shouldn't have been, because I'm a professional in particularly this field, and I kind of knew, yeah, it exists. Sure, it's not disappeared.
Theoretical.
Yeah, exactly. But the level and openness of, like, just on places such as LinkedIn, like where you stand with your full name and job and literally, like, proudly, openly, without any problems, saying some incredible things. That was a shock for me, and I'm still coping with this, because I'm really not sure what have we done, how did we miss this. But that's another story. Still, you have to keep your compass, and I feel like a firefighter and it's a huge wood fire in the forest. It's easy to be a firefighter when there is no really big fires, but now we have a forest fire, and yeah, this is what I do. This is what I'm supposed to be, and so we have to run into this forest and do whatever we can to put down this fire. And the third thing, and I'm finishing here, is right now what's happening in Serbia, and we have student protests for more than 8 months. Students are demanding basically stop to corruption, accountability, rule of law, that the state institutions are supposed to be doing what they are supposed to be doing, and that people with political power stop abusing the power for their personal gain, basically, corruption and money. And those things should also come as no-brainer. But we saw how the state gradually started being more and more cruel and openly breaking its own laws, breaking down the student protests with violence, arrests, arbitrary arrests. People are in jails with hunger strikes, and organizing literally some sort of paramilitary groups to intimidate those who are supporting the students, breaking their shops, buses, businesses, etc. So it's a real clash between the state organized corruption and youth of Serbia, which is craving for democracy and freedom. And again, the power of the state, this is exactly like we learned in this theoretical 10 steps or whatever. The power of the state is very powerful. They have the police, they have the means and tools, and it is not easy for people to stand up and stop the undemocratic, unarbitrary violence from the state towards the people in the chain of command. It's theoretically simple. One of them in the chain should say, I don't want to do this, and the chain is already broken. But you need some guts to be the one, because the first ones are being thrown to jail and arrested. And I'm still optimistic, because I didn't really see this coming either. 8 months ago, if you would ask me, like, so what our contemporary youth are doing, I would say, oh, well, they're just, they have no idea what's going around them. It's not true. They're very clever. They are totally informed. They know what they're doing. They know what's good and what's bad. as young people should. And I hope that this lesson from Serbia, that like young people actually are our future in the best possible way, that we just should support them, is something that I hope we will also learn and see in other countries.
Yeah.
Sadly, I have to admit that we in Poland we know very little about what is happening in Serbia. That's really a shame because it sounds alarming and calling for some kind of solidarity or support, and the media are not covering it at all. And it's
Unfortunately, I know nowhere around Europe this is being covered properly. That's also one of the ways how the authorities are getting away with this, because there is a lack of really support from ordinary people from around Europe. I'm sorry, just to add one thing: the authorities are having 100%, 150% control over the media. So I have no experience with how the media television looks like, let's say in White Russia or North Korea, but I believe that they can only learn from what our guys are right now doing in Serbia, because it's ridiculous. They're like painting, target marks on people's heads, putting their full names on, presenting them as enemies of the people, working against the interest of our Serbian nation, and all these ridiculous, non-meaning, meaning nothing, tropes, but resulting in real violence. So when you, Larissa, when you invited me to participate in this, I thought like, wow, I'm going to participate from a society which is not like theoretically, dealing with like what if and how about step 1, step 5. No, we are at the moment in a situation that I, as an educator about the Holocaust, felt that I need to put it on our website. And it is the first thing when you look at our website right now, that we are supporting the student protests, which is, of course, coming with a lot of costs. But I explain further, we are not dealing with politics. I'm not really even interested in politics. But in a moment when such things are happening, we have to take a stand. Otherwise, I would be just a bystander, is exactly what I'm trying to teach people not to be. So this is a moment when you need to stand up for the truth, stand up for the right of those who are endangered. And I think that we have to lead by our own examples. That's what you have to do.
Yeah, and I think what you've said is the greatest answer to the question which might be asked by many people, why we should learn again about the Holocaust, why you are talking about the 10 stages, why we have to go through these stories, because it's happening. It's not just the past. And this
yeah,
is
it always repeats in a different form, but it repeats. It repeats.
exactly.
You never know, we all were surprised by the current events. But at least you should have this kind of awareness that it may come any moment. I mean, you can at least you can have the idea of the whole palette of the possibilities of what may how it may manifest.
Yes, exactly. And what you mentioned before, like we are in 2025, and you said that media don't cover really the protests in Serbia, that we don't know so much. So this is again the question which comes back about the past, how it was possible that people didn't know. Even today it's possible that we don't know. So that's why it's so important to learn and to see what kind of mechanisms are functioning and what kind of structures are behind all of that. So I think it's really important to repeat it over and over again.
Like in 1942, everybody was looking at what is happening on the front, and nobody was looking what is happening in Treblinka and Auschwitz.
Exactly.
I'd say that's just an example, but it's really chilling, actually.
Yeah, that's true. And you both of you mentioned also like people who are active, who are really important in this whole story. So in our 10 Stages app, we show the complexity of the history through the biographies of some people, through the personal stories. And I would like to come back to the really personal stories and ask you, Piotr, in the context of the fifth stage we're focusing today, the organization, what examples from the Jewish local history, because this is your main focus, the locality, so which examples you consider as powerful cases of civil or cultural resistance, because we know that there are different types of resistance, not doesn't have to be armed resistance. What from Benjamin or broader Zagłębie region you see as a maybe role model or some example which can be shown also to the young people or people from different contexts and different countries?
Yes. Well, the story of the Holocaust is unfortunately very dark, and there are no good, good strategies. These people were put into the situation that was no good way out. And we were researching last few years the stories of the Jewish resistance in our region, especially in the cities of Będzin and Sosnowiec. And the conclusion of that research was a book. You mentioned it. We won't get deported. We try to commemorate as many people involved in that resistance as we could find any information, even if it was a small few lines of biogram. We try to mention them with names, if possible, with pictures, to bring them a real personality. That they were a real people. And what we found out that first of all, they were all the resistance was based on the youth movements, which means that all of the members of the resistance were really young people. They were from 17 to 20 years old. The seniors leaders of the whole organization were maybe 23. And that's one thing. Secondly, there was a very strong those resistance was based on the structures of the pre-war Zionist left-wing Zionist movements. So their way of organizing the organization and the leadership was very progressive. They established a thing called a dual leadership, which means that a boy and a girl, or a man and a woman, were at the equal level leadership of the whole group. And because they had this Halutz movement structures from before the war, it was easier for them to, let's say, use that organizational structure to organize themselves during the Holocaust time. And especially important role was given to the girls because of the obvious reasons. They were not that easy to disguise by the Nazis or the locals. And those girls were incredibly heroic and brave people. They were traveling across ghettos, passing the information, passing false documents, passing sometimes weapons, different things. And without them, without these couriers, girl couriers, the whole resistance, Jewish resistance in Poland would be impossible. So that's another thing. And the third is that what we realized from the studying these biograms of those young people is that out of 170 that we found, 60 of them managed to survive, which is very big percentage, which tells us two things. One is the possibility that the story is written by those who survived. That's why we have more information of the people about the people who actually made it through. But also, I think another theory or another explanation is that being involved in the organization, being involved in the resistance, being active increases your chances of survival. So it gives us some hint for that we could use nowadays, and everybody, not only people interested in the Holocaust, not only Jewish people, can take something from it. Stay organized, be in touch with your people you trust, be active, not wait for the orders of the government, of the, I don't know, Judenrat, Dazis, not wait for that. Think for yourself and try to establish your own structure, your own independent way of working or doing things. That's the most, let's say, promising thing that we took out of that research or of that studies, I think.
So it's really interesting what you are saying, and it's kind of combating two stereotypes. First, which was mentioned already by Mishko, that young people are only interested in some, non-important things, and they are focused on themselves. But here we have completely different story, and without them, we probably wouldn't have so many stories, testimonies, and we wouldn't know so much about what was going on actually in the ghetto in Będzin and Sosnowiec. And the second thing is also the fact, another stereotype which is still repeated by many people, that Jews were just following the orders and they were going like sheep to the slaughter. So here we have another example. How was it actually?
Well, I have to be fair and honest that this is our humanistic contemporary interpretation of that history. It wasn't that optimistic. It wasn't. There was also a very. We are trying. We think that history should be used for the good purpose. Interpretation of the history should be used in a good way for making our world better. That's why we focus a little bit on that positive interpretation, but because also we are not a really academic historians, I have to say. It's not an accurate picture of the whole situation in the Będzin ghetto. There is the ocean of the misery and the betrayal and this disappointment and the enormous cruelty from all sides. But our approach is for looking for the bright sides of that story.
Something what also can give hope and shows that there were different shades of the story. There is not only one-sided, and it was thought for a long time that of course there was this evil, there was all the misery, as you mentioned, but there was also something else.
This what we already knew, but
exactly.
The things we researched were kind of new things that people were surprised listening to.
And also, I think that this kind of discoveries can reshape the local history also. If people are open to that, this is also
hopefully they can take something from them for themselves, or that Będzin and Sosnowiec ghettos had some brave episodes, and this story can be inspiring for the non-Jewish Polish contemporary community.
So we are talking about the research. So we have one tool. We are talking about the history as the more academic side, but we also have the new technologies, the digital tools we are also using. And the best example is our app, which was developed during pandemic as an answer to this, as you, Mishko, mentioned, scrolling only, because we wanted to give the youngsters some content, inspiring content and high quality content, not just something for a pleasure, but something which can enrich the education in the time when it was difficult, because there was a lockdown, there was no chance to visit memory sites, and the app was created as a tool which should help students and teachers and educators visiting the memory sites. But mobile applications is one thing, and I know that terraforming is developing also many different tools, also digital tools, and you are using the new technologies in education. And this is another fight with some stereotypes, because I know that after pandemic it changed a bit, but before that many teachers, many educators were really resistant, and they didn't want to use so much technologies because they thought it's not really educational tool. And now it changed. And I just wanted to ask you, Mishko, how can digital tools and some kind of online educational campaigns, social media support civil society and the fight against the violence and atrocities?
Thank you for this question, Larissa. It is a very important question. You're quite right. There were, for a long time, there was, and still is, I would say, a lot of resistance among both teachers, but also the memory professionals in museums and other places when it comes to use of new technologies. And it comes from basically one and the same source. It's digital illiteracy. And I emphasize this. We really need to work on raising capacities and teaching people digital literacy. Digital literacy, it's similar to media literacy. It's not exactly the same, but let's not go into these details. But basically, if you want to simplify it, digital literacy is giving you understanding and tools to use digital tools and understand what's happening in the digital realm, including how come that I'm getting this information. You mentioned bubble a lot of several times before. How come that I'm in this bubble and that you are aware that you are in informational bubble? So these things are very important. These things are extremely important, particularly now when one of the most important or most challenging problems that we are facing is this distortion of history and abuse of history. In my case, for instance, in Serbia, for populist nationalist propaganda. In other places, it might be for other things. Nationalist populist propaganda is something that is very popular in Europe, both East and West. So I know that you will recognize this everywhere. And for these reasons, for instance, we really need to raise the level of digital literacy among people, not only among young people, but in general population. But of course, our allies in this job, our allies in this fight are youngsters. They are actually already quite much more advanced than the older generations on several levels. For instance, in understanding how technology works and how come that I'm being served this information, etc. But still, obviously, the source criticism, understanding which resources and information I should and can trust, and how to recognize what is a prepared lie, falsification, that is, of high quality production. That's something that we need to work on. So I think that digital tools are just that, tools. It's as new as television once upon a time, as an internet in general and once upon a time, as a printing machine first time when it came. And sure, it changed a lot of things, but it is still just a tool, and it's up to us to know how to deal with it and how to deal with new realities. We are still the people who are creating content and who are responsible for what is being said. It's not some imaginary digital ghost. It is us people, and we will be able to deal with even these AI is, dangers and so on. I mean, I'm cynical a little bit here because I believe that AI is our friend. AI is the one who will help us to deal with most of the Holocaust distortion in a year or two. But it's another story. So I just wanted to say that we have to focus on using digital tools and digital media, both in memorialization and education. It's a contemporary way of communication in our societies. B, it is a way young people are communicating, and we want to communicate with them. C, it opens a lot of new paths and layers for better and new understandings of the past. I mean this. We can see things by using different digital technologies. And I don't mean just like 3D, VR or something like it. No, we can faster connect the dots. We can be virtually at places faster and connect, he was here, and then he was there, and then he was there. And these are the documents from this archive and that museum. And you can find them at one place faster. And then suddenly you understand how it is for women and how it is for children, and how it is for this kind of group and the other kind of group. So you really open also new ways of seeing history. But you mentioned something, Larissa, earlier, local history. I think that we should not forget, in our way of working with what we do, we are focusing on empowering people to look at the local histories, local micro-histories. Often, I mean, there is no square meter in Europe which is not connected to Holocaust this way or the other. So unfortunately, that's not a big problem to find the Holocaust stories in every little place anywhere in Europe. But a lot of times I see in our work with local archives and local small museums in some provincial small cities and towns, that they know some stories about local families and people from their own communities, but they believe that nobody would be interested. They're small stories. The big story is in Auschwitz. That's what they think. While our task is to tell them, no, guys, this is also a very big story. It's just the story of this particular family. But if you don't help us finding the story about this family, who will? We will never know about it. You know the under quotation mark little history of your little town, and that's very important. And it's a gold. It's a diamond. This story of this particular family that we would otherwise never learn about. So the value of researching and then exposing and reaching out with local histories from these institutions such as local archives, local libraries, local museums, but also local schools, and working together with their teachers in researching local histories. This is really a future. And I see a huge value in approaching both memorialization in general, but also education through local historical approach. But we should never forget to link the local history with a broader European context, because you can't really understand what's happening just there if you don't connect it with a broader European development of the Holocaust and Second World War and everything else. So it is very useful to focus on local and then take a step back and then see, at the same time, what's happening in other places, and then you see how this is what we say a continent-wide crime, which has been unfolded in different ways and maybe even in different times, in different places, even by different perpetrators, but it's still one big story. As you know, of course, 6 million murders that happen next to each other.
Yeah, and what you mentioned about these local stories and to showing the local people that this is something important, we also had in mind when we were creating the app, because we asked the local communities to send the proposals of the biographies, because obviously we know some stories, but we can repeat over and over again the same stories from this, let's say, big history, but there are thousands local stories we will never know, and maybe this is the last chance to know these stories, because the last witnesses are passing away, and the young generations sometimes, because as you mentioned, don't think this is something important, so they don't pass it to the next generations or other people, and that's how we can lose so many important stories which can be used also for the educational purposes, and can enrich our knowledge on different levels, not only historical knowledge, but as you mentioned in our conversation, this, let's say, meta level, this emotional, and this feeling of being rooted in some particular place also. This is also helpful to have such stories. So because the time is running out, let me ask a short question about also people and women, because you, Mishko, mentioned also the female perspective now, and that's is also one of the important aspects, and sometimes is forgotten, or we don't, some people, let's say, don't pay so much attention on that, or still the research is ongoing. So I have one question to each of you. I would like to ask Piotr about the female story from the local history, which was powerful, which was, or which is important for you, or which was a big discovery during your work in the heritage, let's say, field.
Well, I think the something that I already mentioned, that one particular girl from the Jewish resistance, her name was Renia Kukiełka, and she came to Benjin from elsewhere. She was a simple girl from the small town Jędrzejów, and she ended up in the kibbutz during the worst time. During the worst time, she found herself in the kibbutz in Benjin, and she survived, and she published a book called it's in English, called entitled by Escape from the Pit. So with a very simple language, she described her experiences. I think it's a really wonderful source of both local history, but also understanding what was happening across Poland, because she was one of the couriers that were passing the information, and it gives you understanding how this whole resistance was possible. Because of this resistance was based on this left-wing, very progressive Zionist ideas. Such a big role was given to the ladies and girls. So I think it really changes the whole stereotype and understanding of the Holocaust in Poland. Seeing it through a fate of such a incredibly courageous girl.
It sounds like really powerful story, and really worth to share with broader audience. We don't have this story on our website, 10 Stages, but we will be happy to publish it and to link to your work.
But you have a Rosa Robota.
We have Rosa Robota, yes, that's true, and we have Rosa Robota also in the app. That was also unstereotypical story. And linking to what you've said, I need to say that when in the stage of testing of the app, we asked the teachers and students who were our focus group and testing group, our testers, we asked them to answer some questions, and I really remember that many girls were writing in the form that they are thankful that we included so many female stories in the app, because this is something what for them was missing in history books during the lessons and so on. That was another perspective they were discovering using this digital tool, because they didn't know so much about it.
I think that one of the most amazing approaches to writing history was Emanuel Ringelblum in the Warsaw Ghetto, where they're and the Onek Shabbat whole circle of underground historians and archivists. Their principle was that every story matters. The story of the beggar on the street, the story of the chairman of the Judenrat means, the story of the Jewish policeman, the story of the regular person, bagel seller in the streets of the ghetto. Every story is priceless. So this is and the fact that they were writing a history during it was happening, it's mind-blowing for me, and it's a great inspiration for, I think, all the generations of the historians who wants to research and understand and educate.
Yeah, absolutely. And we don't have Rania Kukiełka's story on the website yet. I hope that will change very soon. But we have another powerful story, which Miśko shared with us some time ago. Hilda Deitch. This story is also unusual, and it's not known, I would say, broadly. And thanks to you, I got to know this story, and I was really impressed and moved by this biography and what she decided to do during the difficult time, let's say. And I wanted to ask you what kind of educational activities or what kind of materials we can create as educators, having such stories in the center or having such stories as a starting point. And maybe you can say just two sentences about Hilda. Who was she?
Thank you, Larissa. I love mentioning Hilda and promoting her story. I think it's very important because she is a kind of a symbol of a suffering of the Jews in Belgrade and Serbia, in this territory occupied by Germany, and all of those victims that were murdered at the Staro Sajmište concentration camp. But she was a 19-year-old student of architecture when the Germans occupied Yugoslavia then, and then it became Serbia under the German occupation. And she volunteered to work in a hospital, although she wasn't a nurse, she was a student, as I just said. And when the Jews were ordered to be sent to concentration camp that was created there in December 1941, 7th of December, she volunteered to go to the camp, although she did not have to. Her father was the very high in the Judenrat at that time, so these functionaries were not sent to camp at that point. So she volunteered to go to the camp and to work in the hospital in the camp. And we know about the situation in the camp because she wrote 4 letters from the camp, and those letters are preserved. And unfortunately, she was murdered with the rest of the prisoners there, and also her parents and entire family. But I wanted to add one thing. There are so many very important, strong and female characters, real life heroines. And for me, it is important not to stop at what was happening until 1945. For instance, I focus on stories after Second World War in recent educational materials that I'm developing. For instance, through interviews with second generation, I learned about how they learned about their parents and what happened to them. As you, of course, know, most of the times it is the story of like, nobody wanted to tell me, they did not want to talk about it. So I wanted to, find out how did they find out, step by step during many, many decades, usually. But understanding then through this testimony of a second generation, for instance, his mother survived Auschwitz. She had a family. She had a husband and a little son before, and they were murdered. And then she come back to Novi Sad and find strength to create a new family and give life to this boy who is now my friend and giving this testimony. It's incredible courage and strength. It's like really, really hard after such a loss, And this man who is now older man, he wanted to give me a photo of this brother of his who he'd never met and who he's know nothing about. It was his mother's son from the earlier, but just like have this, a trace that this little human being existed for a little while at least. This is also a heroine. It's a story of a fantastic, strong woman. But I would continue further. I also look at the second generation women who went through this discovery of what really happened to my family, what happened to my father, what happened to his family, realizing this, going through this transformation and understanding their identity, which is connected to this Jewishness that maybe they discovered or rediscovered or redefined through finding out this story, and then dedicating their lives to teaching about it and working in museums, etc. So it's also a story of a huge heroism for me. And I really like to focus on these stories because it brings us closer to today, and it brings, I hope, more awareness to other people that this didn't really end at 27th of January 1945. Suddenly, on 28th of January, everything was just flowers and birds. Obviously not. And we are still impacted by this. And there are wonderful people today in the youth club of the Belgrade Jewish community, a tiny little community, and these young women who are empowering themselves, working together on rediscovering their identity and finding out how the memory of a Jewish community that one once used to be is meaningful to be kept and to give them strength to be something new now in 2025, despite the explosion of anti-Semitism that I spoke about earlier and the crackdown by autocratic, anti-democratic government of Serbia today. So all these are female heroes that as I see them, and I kind of use them I do, but I don't like the word using them, but I use their stories at least in education, and I think those are all powerful stories, very important ones, and meaningful ones, and I think that they're all bringing the dough of this bread that we are trying to bake here together and giving it taste structure in bringing it to today, which I think is really, really important, to have this red line coming from Hilda Deitch, who was killed in 1942, but then through these survivors to the second generation, to even third generation today. And I think that we should look at the possibilities to work like this more and more, particularly in a world, unfortunately, without survivors.
Yeah, and I think what you said is really important to show also this continuation, that we are not talking only about the past, and we are talking really about real people, that it's not just someone from the archive, but we're talking about people who are also living today, or they are creating the religious or cultural life, recreating today. And we need to keep it in mind that we are not talking about some, artificial product, but real community and history which is happening today. Because it's I think, pretty often then people are talking about the Jewish history in the categories of the past without the sensitivity that it's not the past. We are talking about some chapter in the history, but the whole story is happening also today. And maybe someone next to you is a member of this community, and to hear such words, just, distancing, and this is the history, it might be really painful even for some people. So I think the sensitivity and empathy are also like keywords in this work we are all doing. So yeah, I don't want to interrupt.
No, I just wanted maybe to add that rediscovering and being proud of your identity, minority identity, and defending your identity is also a in many cases it's a heroic act, and it's a form of resistance, and keeping a dignity of your identity is also an act of courage and resistance. So
yeah, absolutely.
it's not something. Of course, those circumstances of those times were extreme, but the whole idea is applies to nowadays also, not in such a brutal environment, but also.
Yeah, and I think this is the great summary of our conversation today, because we started also with the question, what about the situation when it's not my story? What about people who don't consider this part of history as their history, and they don't think this heritage is their heritage? And you mentioned the identity. This is something what each of us has. And this is something that connects all of us. Doesn't matter if you're a member of majority, minority, or this or that minority. This is this factor which can kind of unite also us, and this way of educating and preserving the heritage, because this is important for everyone. So thank you very much for this really powerful and important conversation. I'm pretty sure we could talk long hours, but the time is already
Thank you, Larissa. Thank you, Mishka, for explaining us a little bit about Serbia, and I'm grateful for understanding a little bit at least about, and I will read more about it.
Thank you so much, guys.
Current situation.
Yes,
Thank you so
I understand.
much.
Thank you so much, Piotr, also for being interested, and thank you for everybody to this opportunity to talk about all these important topics and to get to meet you, Piotr.
Yes.
And I know already that the links to the website and the app are in the comment section. So all of you who are interested, you can simply follow the links. And we all know that summer is a time of rest. That's why we have short summer break with our webinars, and we're coming back in September. Please follow the Humanity in Action Poland Facebook. We will inform you when we're going to meet the next time. Thank you so much, guys, once again, and have a nice evening. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.